But let's talk about the state of our councils with William Yarwood. William, very good morning to you. We had a very interesting caller yesterday who revealed to us, and I thought I'd sort of uncorked some kind of incredible story that not everybody knows about how local councils around the country are installing heat pumps in people's houses without them really being asked if they want them. Heat pumps and solar panels, indeed. So if you're in social housing in many parts of Britain, you'll be getting a knock on the door and somebody trying to put a heat panel in, a heat pump rather, and a solar panel. And the other persons who get them are people on benefits, apparently.
Well, good morning, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show. And yeah, it's interesting how councils will find the time to do something like this, but actually can't collect your bins or indeed fill potholes. Right. So I find it very interesting how councils have time to do this, and also where they're getting the money from. You know, where on earth are they getting the money from? They're constantly complaining about the fact that they have zero money and have to raise council tax on local residents in order to pay for vital services. But last time I looked, forcing locals to have heat pumps, many of whom do not want these things, is not a vital service.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, I mean, you know, we've been told basically that pensioners are getting knocks on the door when they've got perfectly good double glazing to find that they want their windows replaced. You know, and quite frankly, these councils who haven't got any money to begin with haven't got this money to spend, have they?
No, that they certainly don't. But the interesting thing about the heat pump thing more broadly is actually maybe one of the reasons they're forcing this on people is actually many people aren't taking up heat pumps voluntarily, despite the fact that the government's given a level of grants to to give people these kind of heat pumps. Because actually the National Audit Office just last year complained that the uptake in heat pumps wasn't good enough because it wasn't meeting our climate carbon targets. But quite frankly, I don't blame ordinary people for not wanting heat pumps. They're expensive. They're noisy. The majority of people do not have the kind of cash to splash on heat pumps, despite the money they might get given by the government. So actually, in a way, this is just another story in our net zero fantasy where people aren't taking things up naturally. So government has to intervene and force ordinary people to do what they want to do rather than what ordinary people want to do, which is have cheaper energy bills and actually manage their heat and their electricity the way they want to.
And according to the guy that rang us yesterday, they're not being installed properly either, and so therefore they actually install them and then they don't work, so people are very unhappy about it, and their houses are cold as a result.
Yeah, again, that's not a surprise. And actually, heat pumps are not suitable for every houses, especially old houses. And they don't have the infrastructure in them to actually fit these things in. But once again, I mean, this is part of just the wider net zero zealotry we're experiencing in this country at the moment. I mean, our very own Energy Security Secretary, Ed Miliband's very big on heat pumps, so much so that actually in April, a new heat pump boiler tax will be introduced thanks to Miliband's push, which basically is going to fine companies for not meeting their requirements for giving people heat pumps. Right. So not only are people going to be forced to get heat pumps, but actually there's now an incentive for companies to try and force these things on people. Otherwise, they're going to get taxed by the government for not meeting the net zero targets. It's utterly crazy. Just leave people alone. Mad, isn't it?
Let me just ask you one more thing, William, about another story that I've sort of picked up on, which is the state of our roads, not just the pothole problem, but the fact that so many roads are being dug up currently. I mean, I was in Covent Garden this week. I was also in Mayfair, and the number of roads that are just sort of completely and utterly closed off now, that you couldn't drive in. I mean, luckily I wasn't driving, I was walking. But, you know, if you're in any kind of, modified carriage of any kind, whether it's a taxi, whether you're trying to drive somewhere in a van, trying to deliver things, I mean, there are huge swathes of London that are just dug up and you can't go into. And similarly, I'm getting messages from all over the country. I've got messages from Glasgow coming in, from Manchester, from Norfolk, from Suffolk, from, the West Country. There seems to be a sort of, mad dash to just dig up everything that we've got and paralyse the road system.
Yeah, it's completely crazy, and the element of this is where the government says that there's absolutely no money, but they've got money to open new quangos, they've got money to give inflation-busting pay rises to bureaucrats, they've got money to try and force heat pumps on people, and yet they're not actually doing the basics, which is making sure that the roads are open, they're clean, they work, and that motorists can get back and forth from where they're going to. I mean, imagine how hard it is for, a mother trying to take kids to school, or, a self-employed person who spends a lot of the time in their van delivering things around. That's affecting people's normal lives. That's affecting
Right.
people's businesses. And actually, when you mention about closed off roads, I learned the story just the other week of in Wiltshire. There's £400,000 being spent by the local council to protect a closed road, which they basically refuse to open for whatever reason. They're protecting it from, speed races and boy races and things like that.
Right.
Actually, how about we just open the road and allow people to, move on and get on with their daily business? But again, it's just another element of broken Britain. There's enough money for heat pumps, there's enough money for net zero zealotry and bureaucrats in Whitehall, but there's not enough money to just fix the basic things.
It is incredible, isn't it? William, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. William Yarwood from the Taxpayers Alliance there.